All right. Who knows the trick about organizing in modules, adding the text in between there? All right, you guys are nodding yes, right? I forgot how to do that, and I was quickly Googling how to do that. Can you show us? Yes. Because you're nodding. Yes, you should not, never nod if you.
It's like the cog. You're saying to add like text.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Can you bring up a module or or show us or?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's like a cog for the modules. And there's like add a page, add a.
Or we can do that
there's
here. We don't have to do it in your course. We can do it in the actual teaching
All right, cool.
course here.
Teach me.
This is well, it's yeah, I mean, our modules, this is the messiest course in the world, by the way.
Oh,
All right, so here we go.
No, it's not.
You like press the plus button,
All right, so add plus.
and then there should be in the drop down up there.
Oh, the text headers.
Yeah,
That's right.
right.
So,
Okay.
you know, basically you can make this whatever you separate.
Well, okay, so I did, but
Oh, you did.
the interesting thing is that you can't, do you see a place where you can adjust? See, what I would want is a way to adjust that font and make it a really big ass font, right? Something
Yeah.
like.
So the workarounds that people have advertised are things like using the let's go ahead and this one.
Ah.
Using stuff like, you know, star 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 or all caps or you know, things like some sort of
Yeah.
different things. Cliff, have you run into cool practices?
Not really. I just know that's a perpetual challenge with, just even when you're typing and filling out a page, you're doing this in an HTML-friendly environment, and there's no font setting. You can take heading or paragraph, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3.
Yeah.
You can't really pick it. Can't say bump it up to font 14 or something like that.
Well, you can if you click on the HTML side of it, but that requires.
On the HTML side, sure, but that's also just indicative that it happens all the time. Emails, when I'm sending an email, I can't really make it a bigger font. I can just zoom in with the browser.
It becomes kind of like how do you organize outlines.
Yeah.
So do you use a capital A or do you use the Roman numerals, etc. Peter?
You know, I thought you were first referring to the fact of organizing a lot of the small things that you would put in your outline into pages themselves.
Right.
And so reduce the number of small things that you have in a row. I mean, I had the same comments originally, you know, as you have, that students would have to scroll all the way from the bottom to the top and back and forth and back and forth. But so maybe the more effective way of dealing with this is kind of like to organize your pages so that you have maybe links inside a page that goes to something or embed something in a page that sits there, and you don't have to have a separate entry in your list.
Yeah, I like that idea. But is there a way to create it so that you've got, I mean, you've got this modules page. I didn't get the impression that you could have like multiple module pages or something like that. I'd like to have something like you're saying.
One of the
You
thoughts.
can have modules within modules, which often comes up as a question. People like to put something so they can kind of collapse. If they
Yes,
want.
right. Yeah.
But the other thing about modules, I'm not a fan of modules either, or the organization there, because it doesn't provide context for the students to follow through. So I think what Peter was saying is, if you create them in a page, well, now you've got things like, I can have, each one of these can be a link to another page in a module, but I can add some text around it to organize it, to sort of guide the students. Do this first, and then you're going to want to click on this video, and maybe even have the video embedded here so that they can watch that, and now click this, take this quiz here, and that way it just keeps them out of the module thing, because you're right, the scrolling down to do 500 tasks a week or however many tasks you have depends on how hard your course is.
Yeah, you don't have to use modules. You can turn it off.
Yeah.
You can hide them. So.
Yeah, all of the things on the left you can hide. And, you know, Canvas says, and this is borne out by educational psychology research, 3 to 5. If you turn them all off, you can just guide your students here, and then the students aren't like, well, do I click here? Do I click here? Do I click? Where do I find these things? Do I look at files? Do I try to find the right file in it? Do I try to find the right page? I can't tell. There's too many pages. So guiding the students there is a good way.
You know, I'm not arguing in favor for getting rid of the modules altogether, but it's just reducing the number of modules that you would have. Like, so for example, if you have one module per week, you'd have 15 modules. But you could have one module for every 2 weeks, you know, then you'd have 7,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Well, we have some fun things to do with the Canvas assessment. I'm going to invite Laura to come back next fall and talk more about APHIS integration.
Yeah.
So,
I hope
once
we'll have
that
a
gets
success
settled.
story.
But you should all have invitations to the Canvas Active Teaching Lab course. You can get in there, or you can use your own sandbox and mess around. And go through some of these things. Did you use outcomes and rubrics?
Yes, I
You did.
do.
You talked about
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
rubrics, so you can dig into how to create the rubrics and figure out a easier way for Laura to organize them
Yes.
and solve some of these problems.
Yeah, so I'll say this, I didn't actually myself create the connections to the outcomes, but Sarah Hagan did. So she built in the outcomes and made them talk to the rubric, and they're actually in my rubric. So I hope it will work. In fact, the APHIS people have been in touch with us, and they're working on this right now to make sure that the integration works. So.
And I know there's a big discussion sort of at the upper levels of management on campus about that kind of organization with mastery paths at the program level and outcomes, and then it's perfectly fine to use them in your course to connect the rubrics. That's very good practice. Don't stop doing that, but I think we have to wait for guidance before we start saying, oh, our programs are connected together.
Right.
I just had a question. Did you also have issues with your students seeing their rubric feedback? Because I've had an instructor that had the students weren't even looking at the feedback or the comments because they couldn't figure out where it was.
Yes.
And I sent them a video. I sent them like how to click on it. I put up screenshots, and they still weren't looking at it. I'm like, what else do I need to do for you?
Right.
So, and it was just a class of 13 people, so
Right.
and
Yeah.
there only like 3 or 4 of them looked at the feedback.
I think that's very possible. I had 100 MBAs. How many of those people actually, and I did try to send them, here's the instructions, here's how you make sure you look at the feedback, don't just look at the number. But it's totally equivalent of the student that gets their paper, glances at the grade, and sticks it in the backpack, They never, and it's sad because you type all those useful things that they don't see. So I do wish that there were an easy way for that to be seen.
I'm trying to show this, but of course, as a test student, I have not taken any of my own assignments. But it's hard to find, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not obvious.
Are they working on any of this stuff, do you know?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I just started looking about the unmuting thing, just looking on the Canvas
Uh-huh.
community area to see if there had been any, and I could not find anything requesting that hidden magic button be unhit, at least show them. I showed the icon there, so I had not seen that posted yet. There were
Yeah.
other comments about wanting to have just an unmute and unmute toggle
Yes, that would be
being
good.
placed on the assignment.
Okay.
When you're filling out
Yes.
how many points and what the group assigns to and what the due dates are, just have a button that says, would you like to mute this?
Right.
So you can and then you
Right.
can have another request, have it defaulting to mute.
Yes, we just need a button that's visible.
Just something visible.
Yeah.
But if you mute it before they submit it,
Is that mute just muting the grade, or is it muting, like, unpublishing the assignment?
It's the grade.
Oh,
It's
okay.
muting your comments
Sure.
on the assignment. So yeah, because it,
Yeah.
wait, do I know that?
You can still submit it.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
they
so you
can.
know, they just don't
Okay,
just
okay,
say,
good,
okay.
okay, good.
and it also helps when there's more than one person grading. So if there's like an instructor and a TA or whatever, that way they can both communicate back and forth before
Yeah.
That's good.
announcing what their final grade was.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you haven't been in the community, please join. And I think many of you are and have already followed me, so that's good. But, all right, start messing around with the activity sheet. And we'll give you 7 minutes to do that, then we'll come back and
It's just like phase 1.
answer problems that you've got. It's not called an activity sheet, then, is it? It doesn't say anything about it being an activity sheet. Huh. We should fix that next year.
My first active keeping up.
Yes, yes. So, the way that you can use applicants here is to put them in Canvas instead of, so oftentimes we have our own applicant objectives or outcomes for the course, right? And we're working on a PDF or the syllabus or something like that. Or the way you use assignment, right? And this is a way to sort of add the rubrics to make it, instead of writing them over and over and over and over again in each assignment, put them in the outcomes thing, and then you can just link that to a rubric that addresses those outcomes. And then every time you have a quiz, that you there can be that connection. It's not forced. It's a way to, it's one way to reinforce for the students what it is that they're supposed to be learning. And if they're already doing it in the assignments, that's great. This is a way to sort of remind them in the assessment and the grade book too. And for them to do that as well.
It's also a way to kind of use this new rubric.
Yeah. Yeah, if you can write your rubric broad enough so that it can handle a writing assignment and a video, production thing or something like that. Yeah, well, what was our number 3 point, small things, incrementalism? Yeah.
Is that necessary?
Incrementalism?
No, having the same rubric for
Well, what it does is it allows for more flexibility. So universal design for learning would say, yes, it is. Because people learn in different ways and they want, UDL says that we should try to accommodate that your skills might be slightly different than your skills. So if we can get one assessment that lets you do what you do best and lets you do you best, that still covers the content, then we should do that. Rather than forcing everybody to do it. Or the instructor, right? So check out Speedgrader with the rubric because people love it.
So, I'm in a rubric. I have one criterion down. I'd like to add another criterion. Ideally using the exact same points.
Any other questions?
And I click on add criterion and I can do nothing.
Yeah.
Just try this.
So what's missing is kind of like,
Are you using Canvas, the Canvas app?
Not right. Well, I'm gonna figure out.
Yes.
Mine was just doing that too, and I just like had a freelance.
Oh, really?
So I buy here, here.
I get this happens to me.
Oh, you should have gotten this invitation from Canvas course.
Okay, good. So that's all good. But is there a way to,
For today? All right.
so I have to go through and,
Yeah, you should get video, because it's all about this. He also, so in the campus community, if you sign in, and you sign in under your WISC,
so like
there's a
a-
place to vote for people proposed changes, so under all rubrics. If you scroll down a little bit, yeah, people have posted, hey, I want you guys to do this, engineer this. Right, I know.
because it seems like you have to write one rubric to really, and we just get percentages. Okay.
Yeah, so
Might not be
that,
what my
you know,
God.
like that's maybe one thing for you to really share rubric that you can at least insert points. And then if you want to make more specific comments, you can also do that.
Okay, when you say a really general
To
rubric.
end.
Yeah, so I mean.
Something like this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then, is there a way to
Minor.
kind of create a template rubric that I can just plug into every assignment and then tweak?
Right, so once
Okay.
you create this rubric.
Okay.
Yeah,
VAIL.
you want it, use it for
Yeah, that's, I've been doing it.
Once
It's done
it's
for
done,
it.
it's done. Once it's done,
Well, and then,
you-
well, here's the problem. What if, next semester I decide, actually, I think I want to double this to 20 points.
Right.
Then I have to go
Otherwise,
and
it's
buy
not.
it. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there, when would I have to
How
switch?
smart is it? What if you type in 20 right now? It's not that smart.
No, no. It saves me one click. So.
Do you have a Lorraine?
Another option is if you took fewer classes.
Change it back. It just drops down to feature.
Oh,
Wow.
that's so strange.
It is, I would thought it was worse.
Wow. Because if you change the
You want-
grading, so it's gonna be out of 10.
Sure.
Maybe you just have like a 4 times.
They have to figure that out, yeah,
And it's possible, right?
All right, well,
So
if
it's
you
like-
find out how to do it,
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
It's possible
Allowing you to
get,
go
like,
into this person.
You just don't necessarily have to enter it as a grading grading.
Use that?
I mean, we're getting to the point where I'm not actually teaching anymore. I'm just using this tool to approximate teaching.
Well, so you're using this tool to make grading faster for you.
Yeah.
But you can also.
I can do all of this in Moodle much better. And I don't have to switch from Moodle on Canvas until 2019. I mean, so yeah, it's nice to support it, but I don't think that is, I'm shocked actually.
But in this time, maybe you have to create 2 separate pieces. Put it in the discussion board, you could just
But
grade
this is
it
sort
all
of
the way
what
together.
Sure.
And so I was like, oh, I'm sure.
Assignment.
Right. Yep.
Answered my question?
Yep.
I know. Good job.
Vote, go on and vote.
The calculation method,
Yeah.
I've never seen.
Well, you could say.
Does anyone know what decaying average means for rubrics? This is outside my area.
So it has a calculation method that you can choose, and there's decaying average, there's highest score.
So they explained this to me in excruciating detail and nothing stuck.
And nothing stuck.
So I think it might have involved some math that was way beyond me.
I mean, I've been using rubrics for years, and I've never heard this terminology, and so I don't know what it's doing.
See, that's the sad thing is that I realize that I should know this and yet.
Right.
A quick search, it sounds like it puts more weights on the most recent score.
Decaying average takes an average of like all the previous attempts and it counts for 35% of the score, or however you set it at. And the most recent one will count for 65%.
See, that's probably
I mean, as long as they've improved, I guess.
So it's going with the assumption that they're doing whatever this activity is to reach this outcome multiple times.
Multiple times, right, yeah.
So you would have
Yeah.
a subset of assignments that are the same thing.
If they only do it once, then it's only the most recent one that counts for all of it.
So that's a great way to have, to solve the question or the problem of, I want my students to learn, but I want them to, I don't want to just have them take the test 5 times and then have the best score taken. There's a small penalty every time that they take it, so it behooves them to have studied.
I guess because I've used rubrics mostly for more performance tasks,
Yeah.
not for.
One-time
sort of
things
a-
rather than-
A
yeah.
test quizzing kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like a final performance of some kind is what I would use a rubric for, so it isn't like they're getting multiple chances. Whereas
Right.
a quiz, they might be able to retake. I don't usually use.
Yeah,
rubric
it seems
for that.
like every time that they grade it, you'd have to, for every time that they take it, you'd have to grade it again, which seems like a lot more work for the instructor.
Yeah. Interesting, okay.
There's another question over here. No, thanks. These are the questions that this is how we learn, so thank you all for exploring. Speaking of hidden buttons, you all got this part up here, this little dot that you can't see is also, that's where you click to add rubrics, or to add rubrics. Super easy to recognize.
Yes, it is.
It's obvious that that's what that means, right?
3 dots.
Right, and manage rubrics is 3-4 syllables, so there's a decaying average there, so you should figure it out. And this is one of the reasons that I try to force everybody to always get into the activity sheets. We can hear about them, but until you start digging around in it, that's when the questions sort of become real and difficult.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Looking at the notes and the section to it. I think, so it's saying don't save and submit. I think the main thing is like mute the grades. I think if you save and submit.
Yes, it is more important to grade, but once you submit, that's.
Can you also just go back to,
It seems like you want to submit.
You want to save.
the submitting it and you it won't be at all. The grade level.
As long as it's muted.
So.
We put it in the site is non-grade.
Thank you.
Here.
Yes. Here it is.
So this is my very first.
Oh, okay.
And I am just trying to find this sheet online,
All right.
so I went to here.
That is,
Because when I go there, I don't find it, so that's why I'm.
yep, all right.
And then
No,
also
you
there was a
should-
login, which,
Yeah, like you want to start.
so here I am, for like the main page,
Yes.
but not this, and so I'm trying to find a
Yeah, I
search bar, so I have this login.
I mean, it's the same
And
thing.
here's there, and is this like?
No.
No, that's not my.
No, go to Canvas, that was very good.
So, yeah.
Or to your Canvas, there you go. And you should have an invitation to the after teaching that course. If you're registered for today?
Yeah.
So there you are. That's the teaching that.
Okay, so basically, following this is not gonna get me to this.
Yes.
Okay, so here I am. And this is what we're doing.
That's what we're doing. Great.
Now I'm okay, because I know how to use this part.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's
We're
okay.
gonna make this better for next time. Thank you.
No, it's so much easier. I mean, I'm like the student who, I always love for me because I'm the student who doesn't pay attention to the lecture.
Yeah, me
Who
too.
asks for help and doesn't know what I'm doing, even though it's probably there somewhere. And
You're a
then-
good test case of what's
And
better.
it's multitasking all the time.
And I think what's happened, we used to have more instructions here, and I've taken it off because I'm just getting used to it, and I, of course, it's the same issue.
Okay. So I did number one, I signed in, grabbed a coffee and bagel.
All right.
Yes, I listened to you, so I listened to you.
Cool.
Asked if you do.
Overly complicated and just.
Boom, boom, boom. And you can play around in that course. It's open, it's very messy, but part of the reason that it's messy is we let everybody play around as teachers. So you can add stuff, you know, please don't delete stuff. So in the last 5 minutes, are there any thoughts about rubrics and assessments and outcomes? And how many of you have used Speedgrader with rubrics? What do you think about it?
Well, you kind of got me on that, right? I like it though. It is faster. I mean, it's all there. And if you start grading online and you can send things to the students right away, I think it is an improvement and it's an efficiency, right?
There was one snag, a faculty member that shared with me that when you're in Speedgrader, you want to try to start using the rubric by opening, you hit the little button that says use the rubric or show the rubric. He would fill it all out, got the points all there, but the points would not translate from the rubric into the final assessment grade.
Yes, there's a spot, you fill out the rubric and it tells you how many points you got in the rubric, but then you have to put it in to the final assessment grade, which on the one hand gives you a little bit of that squishy space that you need for some courses.
The discovery is that when you're building the rubric, back at the very beginning, there is a checkbox that says, would you like to use the rubric grade to populate that submission or that assessment grade? And he had forgotten to do that, found out after the fact, and then he had to go back and regrade a whole bunch of, or just had to go back and hand enter all those values. But just, you gotta know at the time you're building the rubric that you want that rubric to force that grade up.
And Canvas sends you a very scary message, scary sounding message if you if you try to change the rubric after you've already used it. It's like, whoa, people have already been graded. You can't change that. It's going to mess everything up.
Yeah.
And I think you can still change it, but it's like, warning, warning, danger, Will Robinson.
Well, and something else that you might want to know if you're using Speedgrader with the rubrics, I didn't discover this, and I don't think there's a workaround. I'm sure it is, maybe you guys know. So in the rubric, if you built in these kind of like exceeding expectations, meeting expectations, and doesn't meet expectations, and you've got point values for each one, and there's maybe 10 points and 6 points, and then maybe 1 to 3 points, just however you set it up. If you decide, you can actually decide to give them a point value that's different than what's actually coded in. So you can decide, well, it's not quite a 6, it's more like a 4. It doesn't quite not meet expectations, but it's kind of bad, so you want to put a different number. You can do that, but then what happens, at least in mine, is that it gets rid of the whole it gets rid of the language about exceeding expectations or meeting expectations. It just wipes that, it gives them the number, it keeps your comment in, and that's fine, but then it'll put in something that says something like no marks, or no details, or something like that, that I think students will look at and go, what the heck? And of course there are details, there are tons of details that you've typed in, but it sort of defaults to something weird like that that doesn't mean anything. So you do want to deviate sometimes from the points that you had coded in, and I always thought it was fixed too, but yeah, I don't know what to do. And I went back foolishly and tried to change it after it started grading, and that was not good. So I hope there's a fix for that.
We have a lab on rubrics that Dan has been really digging into, outcomes in rubrics. That was earlier this semester. We got a great activity sheet that is much more of a step-by-step if you're interested in digging into rubrics there. And we've got one on Speedgrader as well. So if you're interested in those things, please go look those up. We only have 1 minute left, so thank you very much for coming. Please help me thank Laura for sharing her story.